One more thing, tough guy. Any more surprises, and I'm gonna kill you.
You're such a tough guy, McManus. But do me a favor, right? Get the f*** off my dick.
In the landscape of 90s cinema, there were villains, and then there was Peter Greene. With a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite, and eyes that burned with a terrifying, electric intensity, he didn't just play bad guys, he inhabited them. He was Zed in Pulp Fiction, the sadist who made an entire generation shudder with a single line. He was Dorian Tyrell in The Mask, the smooth-talking mobster who almost outshined Jim Carrey. He was the fence Redfoot in The Usual Suspects, flicking a cigarette into Stephen Baldwin's face with a casual menace that wasn't in the script. For a brief, incandescent moment, Peter Greene was the face of danger in Hollywood. He brought a raw, street-level authenticity to his roles that most actors could only pretend to possess. But that authenticity came at a steep price. The darkness he projected on screen was a reflection of the very real demons he battled off it. A life of homelessness, heroin addiction, and a struggle for survival that began long before the cameras started rolling. And now, the story has come to a tragic, untimely end. On December 12, 2025, the news broke that Peter Greene was found dead in his New York City apartment at the age of 60. The man who famously prompted the line, "Zed's dead, baby," has left us for real, leaving behind a legacy of brilliant performances and a cautionary tale of a talent besieged by addiction. Today, we're going to discuss his harrowing journey from the streets of New York to the heights of Hollywood, the addiction that nearly destroyed him, and the tragic circumstances of his final days. Let's take a look at what happened to Peter Greene. Peter Greene was born on October 8, 1965 in Montclair, New Jersey. While Montclair is often thought of as a quiet, affluent suburb, Greene's reality was far from idyllic. He was one of 3 children in a household that he would later escape from in the most drastic way possible. At the tender age of 15, Peter Greene ran away from home. But he didn't just run to a friend's house or a relative's couch. He ran to the unforgiving streets of New York City. For years, he was homeless, living a life that reads like the screenplay of one of the gritty crime dramas he would later star in. Survival in 80s New York required a hardness that Greene developed quickly. With no money and no support system, he drifted into the world of drugs, not just using them, but selling them. He became a street-level drug dealer, navigating a dangerous underworld where violence was a daily currency. In later interviews, he candidly admitted that he barely escaped with his life on multiple occasions, recounting instances where rival dealers attempted to kill him. It was a brutal existence. To survive the freezing winters and the violence of the streets, he would often hide out in movie theaters. In the darkness of those theaters, watching films loop over and over, a seed was planted. It wasn't a dream of fame or fortune, but perhaps a realization that he understood the characters on screen better than the actors playing them did. He didn't pursue acting in the traditional sense. He didn't go to Juilliard. He didn't have a trust fund. He stumbled into it in his mid-20s, bringing with him a resume that listed survival as his primary skill. His raw, unpolished energy was exactly what the independent film scene of the early 90s was looking for. He made his debut in Nick Gomez's 1992 film, Laws of Gravity. The film was a low-budget, cinéma verité look at petty criminals in Brooklyn, and Greene didn't have to dig deep to find the character. He was electric. But the role that truly proved his genius came in 1993 with Clean Shaven. Directed by Lodge Kerrigan, the film is a harrowing, difficult watch. Greene played Peter Winter, a schizophrenic man desperately trying to get his daughter back from her adoptive family. It wasn't a cool, villainous role. It was a terrifyingly vulnerable performance. Greene conveyed the torture of mental illness with a physical intensity that was almost painful to watch. He shaved his head, his fingernails, and seemingly his soul for the role. critics were floored. They saw an actor capable of profound depth and empathy, not just a tough guy. This performance caught the attention of a young filmmaker by the name of Quentin Tarantino. 1994 was the year Peter Greene became immortal. First came Pulp Fiction. His role as Zed, the sadistic security guard, is relatively brief, but it is pivotal. The dungeon scene is one of the most infamous sequences in cinema history. Greene played Zed not as a cartoon monster, but with a terrifying, quiet perversion. When Bruce Willis's Butch escapes and tells his girlfriend,
"Zed's dead, baby,"
he cemented Greene's place in pop culture forever. That same year, he showcased his range in The Mask. As Dorian Tyrell, he was the slick, high-rolling antagonist to Jim Carrey's manic superhero. He looked great in a suit, he had swagger, and he proved he could hold the screen in a massive studio blockbuster. He followed this with The Usual Suspects in 1995. As Redfoot, the fence who meets the crew in Los Angeles, he improvised a moment that made the final cut. In the script, he was supposed to flick a cigarette at Stephen Baldwin's chest. Greene missed and hit him in the face. The reaction, Greene staying in character, Baldwin's genuine shock was perfect. It was the mark of an actor who was completely in the moment. By the mid-90s, Peter Greene was on the fast track to stardom. He had the looks, the talent, and the credits. But the baggage he had carried from the streets of New York was getting heavier. While Hollywood saw a rising star, Peter Greene was fighting a war with himself. The drug use that had been a survival mechanism on the streets had evolved into a full-blown heroin addiction. In a revealing 1996 profile for Premiere magazine, the extent of his struggle was laid bare. The article described a man who was barely holding it together. During the production of The Rich Man's Wife in 1996, his addiction reached a crisis point. He was reportedly shooting heroin in his trailer between takes. The situation became so dire that he collapsed on set, an incident that was covered up as a back injury but was, in reality, his body shutting down. He didn't just need a break, he needed to detox. The studio allegedly set him up in a hotel room, the Chateau Marmont, of all places, to get clean so he could finish the film. It was a grueling, Trainspotting-esque nightmare of withdrawal, managed not by a rehab facility, but by handlers trying to keep the production on schedule. The darkness wasn't just physical. In March of 1996, at the height of his career, Peter Greene attempted to take his own life. It was a desperate cry for help from a man who, despite the fame and money, was still running from the trauma of his youth. He survived, and he sought treatment, but the reputation of being troubled began to whisper through the halls of casting agencies. Hollywood is a notoriously fickle industry. It loves a bad boy, but it hates an insurance liability. Throughout the late 90s and 2000s, Greene continued to work constantly. He was too talented not to, but the caliber of the projects began to shift. He appeared in Blue Streak and Training Day, in an uncredited role as a corrupt narcotics officer, a cruel irony, but he was no longer being positioned as the next big leading man or the primary antagonist in blockbusters. He became that guy, the face you recognized, the presence that made you nervous, appearing in direct-to-video thrillers and TV guest spots. His struggles with the law also made headlines. In 2007, he was arrested in New York City for drug possession. It was a public reminder that the battle he had fought since he was a teenager was far from over. Yet, despite the setbacks, he never lost his ability to perform. In 2007, he landed a regular role on the Black Donnellys, reminding audiences that his intensity hadn't dimmed. He showed up in Justified and Chicago PD, always bringing that signature gravity. He worked because he loved it, and perhaps because acting was the only place where the chaos of his life made sense. In recent years, Peter Greene had been living quietly in New York City. He wasn't chasing the spotlight. He was simply living. He had upcoming projects, including an independent thriller titled Mascots, suggesting a man who was still looking forward, still creating, But on that cold Friday afternoon of December the 12th, 2025, the silence in his Lower East Side apartment building was broken by a concern that turned into a tragedy. Neighbors reported hearing Christmas music playing from his unit for over 24 hours, a haunting detail that eventually triggered a wellness check. When the building manager and authorities entered the apartment, they found the 60-year-old actor unresponsive. He was discovered face down, with a facial injury and blood at the scene. In particular, a suspicious handwritten note was found at the scene along with the actor's body. The note read, "I am still Westy," referring to an Irish-American gang that operated out of Hell's Kitchen in the 70s. A grim tableau that hinted at a lonely and painful end. While the medical examiner has yet to release a conclusive cause of death, the circumstances and his history cast a long, sorrowful shadow over the news. His manager, Greg Edwards, confirmed the passing, calling him one of the great actors of our generation, and noting that he had a heart as big as there was. It was a sentiment shared by those who knew him beyond the scary characters he played. A gentle soul trapped in a turbulent life. Peter Greene's story is not a simple one. It is not just a story of addiction, nor is it just a story of Hollywood success. It is a story of survival against the odds, until the odds finally caught up. He took the pain of a homeless teenager in New York and transmuted it into art. When he stared into the camera in Clean Shaven or Pulp Fiction, he wasn't acting, he was remembering. He gave us glimpses into a darkness that most of us will thankfully never know, and he did it with a mesmerizing, terrifying beauty. It is a tragedy that he is gone at only 60. There were more roles to play, more characters to inhabit. But perhaps now, after a life defined by running from home, running from dealers, running from addiction, Peter Greene can finally stop running. Zed is dead, baby, and this time it hurts. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more deep dives into the lives of the actors who left an indelible mark on cinema, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And as always, I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.